Welcome back to the Too Many Hobbies podcast. Today's episode is with my friend Greg Taylor. He is a phenomenal logo artist, digital creator of call-making logos as well as other logos in the waterfowl industry. We also talked about his waterfowl hunting and previous hunting experiences in British Columbia. We had a really long conversation, so I broke it up into two parts to keep everybody's attention. And part one, we'll be talking about hunting in British Columbia. Stay tuned to next week's episode talking about his call-making art and his other art. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Too Many Hobbies podcast. I am your host, Brian Althorpe. Tonight's episode is going to be with Greg Taylor. Greg, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, Brian. Really, appreciate the invitation. It was awesome. Like, whenever I get one of these invitations, it blows my mind that anyone wants to chat to a fellow like me. But I'm always excited to come on here and run my mouth. Yeah, it's good. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to chatting.
Yeah. Well, so I remember seeing the first time that I saw some of your artwork that you do. Mm-hmm. That's what really caught my attention. I'm like, man, this guy is talented. And so that's how that's how I've connected with you. Yeah. But before we get into that, let's go to what got you into waterfowl hunting.
Waterfowl hunting. Okay. So I grew up in northern BC, like real northern BC. So place called Fort St. John. So most people, there's Prince George, which is like 3/4 of the way up. They think that's where BC ends. Like, you can still drive for 8 hours before you hit the Northwest Territories. So we were right in that little corner between, where you're not the Northwest Territories and you're not Alberta. There's a little corner up there. So that's where I grew up. So waterfowl hunting wasn't a thing. Way too cold, and then way too much big game. Like, northern BC is a big game kind of world. So deer, moose, anything you can imagine is in your backyard. We grew up on 400 acres, so there wasn't a lot of motivation to go buy bird decoys when you can drop a mule deer in 45 minutes. So never even thought about growing up. That wasn't a thing. Never, honestly, I mean, we saw ducks all the time, but I honestly don't even think I thought it was a thing. Duck Commander hadn't come out yet. I don't know. It wasn't even on my radar. If you would have told me at 10 years old people ate ducks, I would have thought you were crazy. So, and then I moved. I got a little bit older in life. I moved down to the coast, about as south as you can go in BC without being in the States. So the other extreme. And there's no big game. We got black-tailed deer here, which are actually a funny story. I came down here, met a guy at work. We were talking, and he's like, "Hey, you used to live up in northern BC. You ever skinned a deer?" I was like, "Yeah, lots of times." He's like, "Hey, can you help me out?" I was like, "Sure." I showed up to his garage, and I thought he had 2 dogs hanging there. These things were tiny, these little and they were island blacktail. He'd gone over to a place called Texada Island, and I mean, if they're we're talking 100 pounds, 110 pounds. They're small. They hide in ferns. They're it's almost like rabbit hunting, right? So I was like, "Dude, did you break a law? I don't want to be a part of this. I don't know what's happening." Anyways, turned out it was legal. It was fine. It was just really weirdly small deer. So I got down here. Wasn't a lot of big game. Spent a lot of years of my life. At that point, I didn't have family anymore, so kind of just floating. I actually didn't hunt for a lot of years, and then duck hunting fell on my radar, obviously just because of, the popular kind of TV shows and social media. And I was thinking, man, that looks like a lot of fun, and it was different than anything I'd ever seen, right? Because deer hunting, you're either in a truck and you're kind of cruising the fields looking for something, you're sitting in a tree blind, and anytime the snacks in your pocket make a crunch, your uncle's slapping you upside the head to shut up. So it's very different, right? You're not out there to be social. You're shut up, sit there and freeze. Maybe a deer will walk by. You're okay, I'll just stare into space forever. And that's different, right? So all of a sudden there's these guys, and they're hooting and hollering, and they're laughing, and they're throwing crap. I was that looks like a lot of fun. I can get into that. And then looking at it, so I was well, I kind of took a cursory glance at what it took to waterfowl hunt. And I was wow, that is a lot. I will never understand that. That's way too much. I'm not going to bother.
Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, fast forward, I was working with a guy, and he's talking about duck hunting on the weekends. I was man, I've always wanted to do that. Sounds super cool. Oh man, I don't know how you get all that together. He's like, "Why don't you just come this weekend?" And I was I don't have a good excuse not to. So yeah, sure, I'll come this weekend. So I borrowed my little brother. He had a shotgun, and it's like his old 870 just beater gun. Like this thing, I was like, I don't know.
870 Wingmaster.
Yeah, and this thing is like got chips out of it, it's rusted on. I was like, I show up like in that my fishing waders. Like I'm surprised they didn't even let me. I'm surprised they let me along. So show up, and that was it. So like it was a super foggy morning on a cornfield. Could not see like 30 feet. And I'm thinking, like, I showed up, I was like, what are we doing here? So we're in layout blinds, and I have no idea what's going on. I was like, everything about this just seems insane to me. There's like 7 of us. One guy's like using the washroom like 20 yards like left of our blinds. And I was like, man, I'm thinking like nothing's going to come here now.
Yeah.
Thinking about deer hunting, right? I was like, well, yeah, you just blew the whole hunt, buddy. Way to go.
Yeah.
And then, so we're laying there, nothing. We're set up early. And then I remember like, cause it was so foggy. I remember it so crisp. Like, oh man, it even gets me just like jazz talking about it. But like all of a sudden you could just hear them. Like you could hear birds. Like where, I don't know, but they were like maybe 50 yards up and you could see 30. So you could hear whistling and you could hear like, quack, 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 quack. Like as they just kind of like just settle. And I was like, okay, so it's happening. And then all of a sudden it was probably a flock of, I don't know, 15, 20. It wasn't a big flock of mallards just come like through the fog in your face, cupped up, like on the ground, like at your toes. And then mayhem broke because I had no idea what to do. Right. Also, they're like, when we call shoot. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like thinking again, coming from deer hunting, I was like, you're going to call shoot. We'll like line it up. Right. And then no. So they call shoot. And like I think there's 4 or 5 of us and everyone just unloads. And it's 3 rounds up here. Right. So it's like, and I sit up and I'm like, what just happened? I didn't fire a single shot. So we go to retrieve birds. We're wandering around. Everyone's getting birds. I still have my shotgun on my shoulder. I'm wandering around helping them find birds. We had 1 dog. So, we're helping them just track birds. And 1 solo drake comes through the fog. Here's wings whistling. I turn and I'm the one with a shotgun. I was like, take it. And I remember it was the first shell I fired at a duck. Dropped that duck stone cold. That's not a brag. It just, it was literally about 20 feet away. So like if I had missed it, I would have been way more embarrassed. So it wasn't like it's hard, but it was just, and it was a beautifully plumed out drake. I remember sitting in my blind for like half an hour after that, just like staring at this bird. I was like, this is amazing. And then from that moment on, that's literally all I've thought about.
Yeah. I haven't you right in.
That's it. Yeah. And with kids, like young kids, it's handy because where I am now on the coast, if you want to do big game, you've got to travel a little bit, right? Like not crazy far, but I mean, for a decent mule deer hunt, you want to go up to Merritt, which would be 3.5 hour drive, right? Yeah. So it's not like you're not going for an afternoon hunt anymore, right? You're going away for a day. My daughter, she just turned 5. So like the last 4 years, it's kind of been hard to say like, hey, I'm going away for the weekend, right? Like it's just, know, so the big game hunts kind of became like harder. So all of a sudden it was like, well, man, I can go, like I have a field, not a great field by any means, but it's a field that's like 6 minutes away from my house.
Oh, perfect.
So I can go there. Yeah, I can go there. They'll like throw out 12 decoys. Get like, I want you to limit every time, but if I get 4 ducks in an hour and head home, I'm happy, right? Like I've been out, I've hunted. You get it out of your system. You've hunted, you've had a good time. So perfect. And like that's that. Oh man, even just like I said, this I'm like all antsy now. Just thinking about that first time. Yeah,
we're getting close to the season too.
Oh man, yeah, we're really close. Yeah. But that was like, that was it for me. Hook, line, sinker, done. Like all in. I was like cruising Craigslist buying decoys the next day. That was it. Haven't looked back. Haven't thought about it twice.
I think anybody that I've ever talked to that's like they've gone out and their first hunt was a good one, there's no way you can turn them away. Like it is going to be, they are hooked no matter what.
That's true. I think even though like for me, I think I could have walked away with that day and we all could have been skunked and I would have been happy. Because it was just a whole different dynamic, right? Like I don't think, like if you don't have the comparison between the two, it's just so drastically different. Like I've never been on a hunt before that hunt. I mean, like I've done like truck hunts where like you can like chat, but like you're still like, okay, shut up. We're glassing. Don't talk to me. Like, okay, like, I'll look out my window. But they just like, just like shooting it. Like we're just like shooting the shit, laughing. Like guys like throwing crap at each other. Like I was like, this is actually like, this is socializing. This is a good time. It was just a whole different like that. I would have, if it had stopped at that and just been a whole different social aspect, I would have been happy with it for sure.
Yeah. I think it's something
birds
different.
Are a bonus, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's almost like fishing where like, you can hang out and like, even if the day sucks as far as like a harvest, You're at least like hanging out with people you like, and you're bullshitting, you're drinking coffee, you're, you know, doing whatever, eating food, and it doesn't matter. It's not going to change the travel of the birds. Yeah,
you're in the spot or you're not, right?
Exactly.
And that's how I sell it to everybody. Actually, it's funny because that's literally the like now I'm always trying to get buddies in, right? Because I've got a few buddies who are more experienced, but then I'm also kind of trying to do my own thing. Like one thing with waterfowl hunting is you'll hunt a lot with guys. I think the only way like there's like a lot of mentalities, I guess, in the waterfowl hunting world, right? Like how do you navigate this one without like stepping on toes? Okay, so if I say anything, I'm just gonna preview. If I say anything and you feel guilty, like that's a bad, like then just reconsider what you're doing. But like I'm not pointing anybody out. But you know, like there's the guys who are like, I have long hair, I'm growing it out. This is for like a children's foundation. This isn't a mullet. But like you've got the guys with like pit vipers and mullets who are like crushing 6 Red Bulls and like going out in Daisy Duke jean shorts. You know what I mean? And they're having a good time. All the power to them, right? And then you've got the guys who are like, they only shoot drakes and it's got to be within 5 feet. And like, I'm only shooting them in the head. And like, if they have a band, and other than that, I don't hunt a duck. There's those guys, right? And then there's like a lot in between, and there's just different, like, there's different reasons everyone's in the field. So like, I've got a few guys that I've hunted with who I don't hunt any more, because not that I had any judgment cast on how they hunt. It's just not what I enjoy, right? So so I'm always trying to get new people in who I'm like, hey man, like we look like we're the same. You want to get in the waterfowl hunting? And they're like, nah, I've seen Duck Dynasty, I'm not interested. I was like, and that's what I would say. I was like, imagine fishing, but hunting. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, well, you literally like sit there, you chat, and then when the bite is on, all hell breaks loose. You like maybe harvest a couple ducks, and then you go back to chatting like nothing happened. I was like, that's it. Like, really? I was like, that's literally it. That's like, that is all it is. And I've hooked a few guys like that, so it works. But that's always the analogy I use. It's like it's the fishing of hunting. That is what it is.
That's crazy. So you started with big game. What was the biggest game that you've harvested up there? Moose.
Moose.
I was hoping.
Which is always not like, which is crazy to me. Like a moose is big. Like I'm not going to play down the size of a moose. But like, I don't know. It's just like you're in Canada. It's a moose. I don't know. Like, right? Like I always talk to guys like, especially way down, so they're like a moose. Like you're like, it's a moose. I don't know. Like,
well, if you've seen it your whole life, you're conditioned to it. It's
just like, but it's just a cow, with really long legs. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's the only difference. Like it is an amazing creature, I guess, right? But like again, I've seen it my whole life. Like then if you told me like a crocodile, I would also be like, I have nothing to do with that. So there's a few guys on the south we were talking, because like I was like, I've always wanted to be on a flooded timber hunt. Like that's on my bucket list of waterfowl hunts. And so I like talking to guys in the south. I'm like, man, flooded timber, you're so lucky. Like, you ever worry about gators? They're like, well, as long as they're not within 5 feet. And I was like, man, I feel like as soon as I put a toe in the water, gators would be on my radar. And then they're like, well, as long as it's like smaller than 2 feet. They have all these weird things. I'm like, well, smaller than 2 feet. I was like, its mouth is still a foot. Like, but then they fire back to like, aren't you worried about bears? I was like, I don't think I've ever worried about a bear. Like, I don't. They're not hiding in the water. Like, you'll see them coming, but it's just weird, right? Like different regions, everyone worries about different things. But a moose. I've harvested a moose. It is big.
That's so cool.
It's just like a long-legged cow. That's if I had to describe it. If you have cows in your area, imagine that, and its legs are 3 times as long, and you're probably in about the right size range.
That's so crazy. It's funny that you say that, like eating. Being oh, of course. But it's funny that you say that, like being conditioned to it. Like I'm in the middle of where you're at and where the gators are. So like
no man's land.
So like we have nothing poisonous that can kill me if I go in the water. So like I go down south and there's poisonous snakes, there's crocodiles. But then if I was to come up there's bears, moose, other stuff that can kill me. But like you're just shrugging it off because you've seen it your whole life.
Well,
and the difference is people in Florida and they run dogs and stuff, and I'm like, aren't you worried about like, your dog getting eaten by a gator? And there's like, they're there. It's whatever. Like you don't bother them, they won't bother you. And I'm like, I don't think that's how it works.
No. See, the thing is my only, so we've had this conversation lots. And so I only have this is why I have multiple theories on this, but like in Canada, like everything that will mess you up or end your life is like big. Like if you get eaten by a bear, you made some mistakes, right? Like there's no way you're like sitting in your blind, minding your own business, and like bear attack, like out of nowhere, like, you know what I mean? Like that's never gonna happen. Like it's crunching through the bush, it's snorting it, like it is. Imagine the clumsiest 400-pound man you've ever seen stumbling naked through blackberries. Like that's what you're listening to as this thing wanders around you. So like it's not gonna sneak up on you. right? Like, and they're not small. I mean, like the worst, sneakiest thing is like a cougar. They might sneak up a little bit, still massive cat.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, you go down south, like a snake this big out of nowhere bites you on the ankle, and like that's game over. Like that's the stuff that scares me, because like you can't predict it, right? It's like, or a gator, it's like you see eyeballs floating. Like that is not enough. That is not enough to go on. A grizzly bear, it's like that. Yep, you're 300 yards away. I'm not going to come closer. Right. But a gator that is all of a sudden in your lap is like a whole nother story.
Yeah. Well, it's like when I used to spend a lot of time down south, people would be talking about gators and snakes and stuff, and I'd always tell them like that's why I live where the wind hurts my face.
Yeah, that's awesome. Like, it's a good point.
Yeah, but that doesn't apply for you because it's freezing cold up there, and you can still get, well, like you said, probably we're going to get here. Or attacked, but yeah.
Like we have poisonous snakes, like because like BC's weird in the way of like the rest of Canada, so it is odd. Like, so when most people think Canada, they're thinking like Ontario, Saskatchewan, like that stretch of like prairies, East Coast.
Got it. Okay.
So like West Coast, we're just drastically different. So like you hit Alberta, that's kind of your cutoff of the prairies, and then you hit the Rockies. Okay. And then the Rockies are like this giant border as far as like ecosystem goes to what's on the other side of it. So like Seattle, Portland, like Seattle, like that area, like your guys' Pacific Northwest, that just carries up into the bottom half of BC, right? So we have the rainforest. It pours rain 9 months out of the year. We have a super hot summer, and then it pours rain again. It might snow for a week. Like that's all we get. Okay. And then you move up into like the middle of BC, and it's like arid deserts, like Merritt, Kamloops, Kelowna, that area is like desert. So like we're talking tumbleweeds, rattlesnakes, desert. Like nothing grows there. Cattleland ranch, like everyone, like that's where all of our cattle is in BC, is in the middle chunk, because it's all your rangeland. Like it's just shitty scrub brush for, rolling hills that nothing will grow on. So people raise cattle. And then you go just past that and you hit like oil fields, snow, and like wheat territory. So it's like 40 degrees, which would be 105 for you guys for 4 months out of the year. And then it's minus 30 degrees for the rest of the year, which is, I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but it's probably gross. Yeah. So, and that's basically what that is. And then like, that's where all the wheat and grain and stuff grows up there, because they have a really good grow season. Lots of moisture from all the snow melts. And then you hit desert, which is like crazy. Like we're talking in the middle of summer, it'll be 45 during the day and then 0 at night, like those huge fluctuations. And then you go a little bit, like 2 or 3 more hours south, and you're in a rainforest. Like BC is we're like a layered province as far as that goes. So
that's interesting. Crazy. I would have never guessed that.
No, because everyone always, like I said, the East Coast is kind of when people think Canada. Ontario is our big, like, that's our spokesperson, I guess,
right.
But so we're pretty lucky. And the nice thing is, because of that, like it's very diverse as far as if you're an outdoors person, like what you can go see. Like I can hunt waterfowl in not flooded timber, but like I can hunt them in like marshland on the edge of the river. And then I can drive, like I said, for 3.5 hours to Merritt and be hunting like mule deer on rolling ranges. Like it's just very different. It's right. It's lucky. Like we're very lucky to be where we're at. And like we have turkeys here, like up in the desert area too. Like there's all sorts of stuff all over the place.
That's so crazy.
If you're willing to look. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that anybody would really guess that, thinking like, when you think Canada, you think cold. Yeah. You kind of think like you said, prairies, and you would never guess that, like, for us, that arid desert area would be like Arizona. Yeah. And it's where it's like 100 degrees during the day, and then it drops down to 30 degrees at night, 30 to 40 degrees. Yep. It's like, that's so cool that there's that much diversity in one province, and you're right on the coast. Yeah. So and like then fishing, also we're on the coast, like ocean wise. So that, like, for me to go ocean fishing would be an hour drive, right? Like obviously I don't own a boat, but like an hour drive to a boat to go out in the ocean fishing. Then I can be fishing salmon runs within half an hour of my house. I can be hunting like blacktail up in the local forest mountains within 45 minutes, be hunting ducks within 10. I can be hunting mule deer within 3. Like there's just like everything is around here, right? And then if you think about it too, like when you guys think Rocky Mountains, Colorado, like that's also like in the middle of BC on the Alberta side, like that's the same stretch of Rocky Mountains you got in Colorado. Right. It's just carried up, right? So we also have like that whole mountain town aspect with like mountain sheep, mountain goats. Like you want to go on helicopter and hunts where you hunt mountain sheep in the middle of nowhere. Like we got that. We got all sorts of stuff. But yeah, BC is a very weird ecosystem where they all kind of coincide and like overlap a little bit. It's very interesting. That's really cool that there's that much diversity there.
Yeah, it is cool.
And you chose waterfowl.
Yeah. I mean, in my direct area, it's definitely the most accessible. Yeah. And it's fun. I guess, like I said, it is a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so how long have you been doing it?
I shot my first duck. That first duck story would have been the end of 2019. So November 2019. It was the 2 days before my birthday. I was like, they went on this duck hunt and shot a duck. Yeah.
Yeah.
So very new to me.
Yeah.
Extremely new. But I've logged a fair amount of hours since then.
Yeah, sounds like it,
probably more
sure,
than I should, but I've definitely logged a lot of hours since then. Yeah. We have a long season compared to most too, right? Like, what do you guys have for like goose limit or duck limit in your area?
So goose, they just upped it up to 5, and then federal duck in the States is 6, but then per state it'll vary by species. So you can
yeah. So we're 8.
Okay.
Hold on a sec. Okay, anyone who's listening to this and you're in BC, don't count this as the regs. We're 8 ducks and 10 Canadas a day.
That's crazy.
So that could be like a Canada goose or a lesser goose, like a cackler.
Yep.
And then we have an early goose season and a goose season that overlaps duck season. Then we have a late goose season.
Yep.
And then we don't have like your guys's. Man, I see some of them videos that conservation you guys do on the snow geese.
Yeah,
like, that's bananas. We don't really have a lot of snow geese where I'm at either, in my area directly. But
got it.
Then you can also take 15 a day.
Yep.
Where we're at for the whole season. So like like there's a lot of birds. Like that's even the guys in Ontario that I talk to. Like they're primarily goose hunters. Okay. Because that's what's abundant in there. Like there's ducks, but not like what we have here.
Right.
We have a lot of ducks and not a huge concentration of hunters. So it kind of twofolds. And we have a huge population of like resident geese, which I mean, like total side note, like what's crazy to me, and this again kind of like blur the lines a little bit between fact and my story here, but like, so geese actually aren't native to the West Coast. So they were way back at some point in history native to the West Coast, got hunted, disappeared, no more Canada goose. So like if you talk to old hunters here that hunted in like the 70s and 80s, they would actually like to see a Canada goose, like lesser, greater, a Canada goose period in that time period was like that was like your lucky day. You saw a goose fly overhead. Really? And then what they did is they had a problem with geese on the East Coast. So they actually like loaded them all into like military like air carriers. They like when they're in the molt, they like herded them all onto planes and then like flew them over here and just dropped them off because they were trying to like reintroduce a population, right?
Really?
So they did that, and now they're like a pest species. Yeah. Yeah. So like geese here are, so you can actually like you can get a hunting license and you can apply for it. And there's like some loopholes you got, not loopholes, but like some hoops you got to jump through. But you can get like I don't want to call it like eradication. That sounds bad, but like basically you're just going, you're doing pest control for farmers.
Yeah, it's a nuisance permit.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And then there's like no harvest limit. You're not allowed to wear camo. You're not allowed to be in a blind.
Got it.
And then other than that, go nuts.
That's
because like it is like it's crazy because I think there was a stat. Rough numbers 21 or 22. 22 geese will eat in an hour the same amount of feed off a field as one cow will.
I mean, it makes sense.
And that's the ballpark number, right? So if you're a farmer and you all of a sudden have like 600 geese in your back field, like that's not good news, right? So a lot of farmers here will obviously like they like that nuisance nuisance help. So but and then we have resident geese. I don't know if you guys have those.
Yep.
Where they don't leave.
They will leave, but what we have is like we have an early goose season. So our early goose season, it goes for like 10 days in September in Ohio. In Michigan, it goes for a whole month of September. Yeah. And so they used to call it, I think, resident goose season, but they just started calling it early goose. So we have the same thing. Tons of Canada geese, big graders. They'll eat the shit out of a cornfield or soybean field like that. And so we have that goes in September. And then our duck season starts in the middle of October, goes till like the middle of December. And then it takes a week off. And then we can go for our late goose goes till the second weekend in February.
Okay, so we're not that far off. Like we start a little bit earlier, like a hare. Like ours is like end of the first weekish, beginning of the second week of September until October. like almost the end of like almost October 1st. That's our early goose. Yep. Then there's like a week to 10 days off. It all depends on the weekends because they seem to always start it on like a Monday for whatever reason. And then we have like, so it's usually like September 14th, 15th, and that goes until January 14th, 15th. That's our duck and goose season. And then it takes, usually it fires back up in mid-February, and goes till the middle of March.
Oh, okay.
So
yours goes a little later than ours.
Yeah. But we have a goose population actually. So, because right now the southern coast where we are is like, it's perfect. There's like literally no reason for them to leave. We've got farms, we've got water. The water never freezes. It's like the temperatures fluctuate just enough to like trigger breeding, but not enough to push them anywhere.
Got it. I
We have geese. Like, I mean, I can go out like literally at any time of the year to one of the local parks and there's just geese hanging out.
Yep.
A buddy of mine lives in the city. Like they had to, they had to pay their strata board to hire pest control because 3 geese were nesting on like the roof of their building and like attacking people when they were going in and out. So it's insane here. So like I actually, I think in the last 2 years, year and a half, they actually started like, you know what egg addling is? Are you familiar with that? It's like where they go around and shake the egg. So they like the geese will, like, you never done that? I've never done it personally.
They used to do like tar on the eggs.
Yeah. So they used to oil soak them for a while.
Or oil soak them too.
And then like, you know, PETA and the environmentalists had a problem with that. So they figured they'd split the crowd and like, now they don't use the oil. So the environmentalists are happy.
Right. Yeah.
So they just shake the eggs. I don't know what it does. They shake the eggs and then they put them back so that the geese will still nest, but like nothing hatches. Actually they've just brought that back in the last 2 years in Vancouver, like the actual big city district. Cause like they were like Stanley Park, like all of the things like in the downtown center were like so overrun with geese. Because we've actually had between the migrators and the geese that had become residents, they've actually bred and created their own, like it's a now they're saying that it is actually identifiable as its own subspecies. Like the Fraser Valley has a goose all of its own. It just like doesn't move, doesn't live, does its own thing. I mean, it looks exactly like every other goose, so I don't know how they know the difference, right? But its breeding grounds, I think, is what defines it. And they live, breed, and spend their lives within this, like within our MU, which is what we call our hunting area, and they never leave. So they become, because of that, that's what makes them their own species, because they don't go anywhere else and breed with anything else. They just breed within their own area.
Yeah, they just incest geese.
Yeah, exactly. And they are all year long.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Until hunting season, and then they miraculously somehow find somewhere else to be.
Yeah.
At least my experience, right? Like, man, this field is loaded all year. Week before hunting season, they all go somewhere else. You're like, no, okay, cool, perfect, good.
That's crazy.
But that's waterfowl. They'll humble you every hunt. That's my experience. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You can go out and kill them one day, and then you go back the next and don't shoot a single thing. That's happened to us plenty of times.
I've even had the hunts where like you go out in the morning, you have this nice setup. You think like it's gonna be dynamite. Sun comes up, not a bird in the air. Maybe like, you know, you get like a couple pairs fly over there and give you a look.
Yeah.
Then your buddy's like, hey, I was gonna hit that field after work. What do you think? And you're like, I was there this morning, it was garbage. He's like, I'll go there anyways. And then like he texts you, like, flipping it out in 12 minutes. You're like, what? What happening?
Yeah, they can change by like the moon phase. I mean, anything is just like, there's been times where we're like, oh man, we were going to smash them. And then we go to the boat ramp and it's a full moon. We're like, why are we here?
It's weird.
Like, all night.
Yeah. I've started doing so my first season, I didn't really pay attention to anything. I was just happy to be out looking at ducks.
Right.
Last season and the tail end of the season before I started actually, Ducks Unlimited has an app.
Yep.
Again, I'm not going to throw shade, but the Ducks Unlimited Canada app is not good at all. Comparatively to just the general Ducks Unlimited, which if you say just Ducks Unlimited, it's implied that it's US. That app is awesome. So I downloaded that. Literally none of its functions work because it stops at the border. Nothing comes north except for the journal on it. Like you can log all your hunts.
Okay.
So like you can type in, it will GPS you. So like you can type in where I hunted, and then via GPS it'll get you that like local weather. So
that's cool.
logs that already for you. And then through that, then it's got like a picture section if you want to put a picture up, and then it's got a note section where like I've done that, and then harvest. So like you just like click on the tab and it'll tell you like duck or goose. You click on which one, it'll go down species. You click on which one, drake or hen. So like I've actually the last couple seasons I've done that for every hunt. it's just kind of neat to like look back and be like, oh yeah, we were here like last year, the same month. It was like super cold and was awesome. And then all of a sudden the next year it's like really hot that month and the ducks suck. So I think note taking, like, waterfowling is one of those sports where like big game hunting, you kind of like per hunt, I think you get what you put in. Right. Like if you're gonna go after like a mountain sheep or a mule deer, like the more kilometers or miles you put on your boots, the better hunt you're gonna have. But like, it ends. Like you pull the trigger, you drop that deer, whatever animal. That's the end of your hunt. You will probably not think about it until 3 weeks before the next season when you start putting up cams, right? Whereas waterfowl is, I mean, you can look at stuff that you did 3 years ago, like as far as like spreads or layouts or where was our blind on the field that year and which angle were we facing? What was the weather like? Like it is this ongoing, never ending, like as much like intention and information as you want to pull out of it, it will keep delivering, right? Like, or you can be the guy who just has buddies with decoys and you show up once in a while with Tim Hortons and shoot some ducks. Like that's great. Right. Like we all have that buddy, right? Like who you don't talk to, your friends. Yeah. And then you literally don't talk to them until 3 weeks before season. It's always that text like, hey man, how's life? Like,
like the meme.
I wonder why you randomly just thought of me today. Yeah. Right. So there's always that, right? But I mean, and that's fine. If that's the guy you are, that's great. But like also if you're the guy who wants to take meticulous notes on air pressure and weather patterns, like you can be that guy. Like waterfowling more than any other hunting has that like vast amount of depth that you can dig into to the point where like you'll go crazy because it is
of course
never ending. Yeah.
Oh, it'll make you insane.
Oh yeah. The amount of times I've left the field going like, did I call wrong? Was my field crap? Like well, you're just like, what? Yeah, there's too many variables.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah, you can do everything right and still show up, and it can be either the greatest hunt of your life or the worst hunt of your life.
Yeah. But the nice thing with waterfowling is at least you're still there. Like if it's the worst hunt in your life, at least you're still there shooting the shit, right? Like, it's different than sitting in a tree stand for 8 hours in complete silence and then going home empty handed. It's kind of like, well, that was a waste of a day. But if nothing else, even after a couple hours in the blind, like you've had a good time.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I think that's the main difference between the different styles of hunting is that like a lot of people that I talk to, they'll be like, what, like they'll ask me, why do you enjoy it so much? And it's like, well, because you can have a great harvest, but you can also just sit there and have fun with your friends. Yeah. Like it's just it's not a social on the harvest. Yeah. There's way more to it. And like for me, it's I can be taking pictures or like have the dog out, and like that's a whole different aspect to it. You can keep adding stuff like that. Like you can be a guy that never hunts with a dog, or you can be a guy that loves having your dog out and watching that dog just retrieve a bird. Something so simple is like just the greatest thing you've ever seen.
I remember my first, like, I don't have a dog yet. Yeah. Asterisk. But yeah, because I hunted a lot of times, right? And like I hunt back sloughs. So in my area, it's a lot of like sloughs, cedar forests. We have the Fraser River, which is massive. So like you're hunting like some kind of swampy stuff on the edge of that, or fields. So like a lot of different, like I could be hunting like a 20 by 30 pothole in the middle of a forest one day to hunting like a wide open corn, like not cornfield, but like, cornfield, not a lot of wheat, but like corn or berries the next day. Yeah. But I totally lost track where I was going with that. Oh, dogs. So anyway, so like my whole life I've been like chest waders, like I've got like poles, like pulled ducks out of these ponds, like kayak, like, and then I went on a hunt. I don't know, like probably 3/4 of a season in with a guy that had a dog. I remember just watching this. I was like, this is awesome. Like just watching like and it wasn't even like the fact of like everyone who says it, they're like, well, you're just lazy, you don't want to get your own ducks. It was just watching that, like the I don't know, camaraderie, just the way they would work together, right? Like he's like doing one thing, but he's waving his hand and the dog is just doing it. And I was like, this is awesome. And then like watching the dog bring it back, and even just like, I don't know, like, you probably got to be an animal person, which a lot of people think hunters aren't, but like you can see a look of pride on a dog's face, right? They drop that bird off and they're like, yeah, I found it. Yeah. Right. And you're like, you did. I can't believe it because I dumped in a bunch of blackberries. Good job, buddy. Right. Like it's just like a weird, like, but that dog is proud. It's stoked. Like they're shaking as much as we are waiting on the shot. Like, it just added a whole nother layer. That I remember that first time I did with a dog, I was like, I'll have a dog one day. Yep, that'll happen. Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a whole different dynamic. And the other thing about it too that people don't really understand, like you just said, you dump it in some brush or some cattails or something, you might never find it. But that dog will find it. 99% of the time, that dog will find it. It's just crazy. you see those pictures of dogs coming when they got like those, I don't know what kind of grass it is that has those like barb seeds.
Cattails.
Yeah. And they just come out and the dog is like, just has a whole nother coat of just trash.
Yep.
And it just like comes out with a duck. It's like a blood. I was like, where the hell did you find? Like, you even hear stories of like those dogs, they send it, they see a bird go down, they come back with a bird that's not even the same bird. Like, where did you get this thing? Like, it just, and they just love it. And when you watch those dogs work, like they are passionate about it. Like it's a soft thing to see. And another layer. And again, that's something where like with waterfowling, there is that other layer, right? Like, you can kind of just keep getting more and more invested, which I think is what keeps a lot of folks out. And honestly, like as a new hunter, that was super deterring, I guess. Yeah, it would have been super deterring for me, just because, I mean, you watch the shows, you look on the forums, you look on Facebook groups, and it's like, and you just watch like, oh yeah, like, you look at like Goose beat down 57 dozen decoys. You're like, what the hell? Like, and you like go on like, you're like, well, how much does a dozen? Holy shit, it's like $200 for a dozen decoys. Like, and you're like, well, I don't know how I'm supposed to, like, especially coming from big game hunting where you're like, well, I need like my grandpa's old rifle. And a $12 box of shells, and that's my next 6 seasons. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, and that's it. And an old Mac jacket. Like, that's like to keep me warm. So so I think it's deterring because a lot of folks, and then there's, I mean, again, I don't want like, anything I say is never meant to slight anybody, but like, you get like, and the difference with waterfowl hunting is I think it has a heavier presence of pro staff probably than any other, maybe hunting industry, and for better or for worse. It has both aspects, but for like, I mean, you get these guys out there wearing all 𝐬𝐨𝐽 from head to toe. Like, they're walking around the bush in like more money than my truck is worth. Like, like especially in Canada, like 𝐬𝐽𝐽 is not cheap. Like I own a 𝐬𝐽𝐽 hoodie, like in Canadian, that's like almost $300. Like I want it in a waffle. So like anyone that thinks I'm well off, like cancel that. But like, like, right. It's just like, and it's insane to me. Like, you're wearing 6 layers of that, you're crawling. I'm like, man, I would be scared to go outside in that. But it's like they're wearing that, they're stacking, like, unless you stack limits, there's no point going, like, there's that, right? So if you're a new guy and you're absorbing 80% of probably the YouTube content, it's daunting, right? Like, because you're gonna go out, you don't have all the right gear, you've maybe cobbled together like 12 crap decoys that you found at a garage sale, and like you're already starting off thinking like, well, this is never gonna work because like I saw the guy, like, and then you've got like your grandpa's hand-me-down camouflage jacket, and so like you almost start off already in this bit of a deficit, and then you only shoot 1 duck, right? Which I think if you go out on a hunt in your first 10 hunts and you don't have someone taking you, like say you're just, you're going to do it on your own, which is some folks' reality. Like if you down a duck in 10 hunts, celebrate that shit. That is not an easy thing to do. Like, no, so
it's super difficult.
Right. But they're looking at it going like, oh, it's only 1 duck, I didn't shoot limits. Who cares about all that? And the problem is that there's that side of things that it deters the newer group a little bit because it's just daunting, right? Like I need to have, I got to have 3 dozen floaters. I got to have at least, 4 dozen full bodies. I got to have 10 dozen side. Like, this is like, you look at the shopping list because like, you can see it on some of the groups where someone comes like, hey, never been waterfowl hunting before. I own a shotgun. What else do I need? And then like the shopping list that people put up, and it's like, this guy wants to go out and maybe shoot a duck. Like, dude, you need 6 old crap decoys, your gun, and you need to know how to hunker in some brush. If you can do that, you've got a decent shot. Yes, maybe not as good as having 20 dozen decoys in a field, but like, but the reality is you're also just wading in the water. You're not going to start with all that stuff. So I always tell guys, like, get the bare essentials. If you're hunting water, get a dozen floaters. If you're hunting field, get yourself a dozen field decoys. Find a spot where you know the birds are going to be and hang out, learn the birds. Because the thing is too, is like, birds in your area might not like silos. So why go buy 6 dozen silos, right? Like, dive bomb, rail geese, whoever. I mean, they got great marketing and like slay all sorts of ducks, but your area might not work, right? And that's nothing wrong with that. And you might find that 5 dozen geese actually deter geese, because there is a certain point where like these are animals, and if you're a flock of 12 and you see a flock of 60 on the ground, you probably don't want to come get the heat. You know what I mean? Like, if you and 2 of your buddies leave the bar and there's 12 guys that want to fight, you probably want to avoid that a little bit and maybe head on your way. So maybe putting out 6 dozen decoys isn't good to start, right? So like, I always say, like, whatever investment you can get in it, go out in the field. Because like, again, if you got you and even 1 buddy, you're never going to have a bad day in the field. Doesn't matter if the ducks show up. and then build your gear as you go, because every climate, everything is different. And those are some of the advice I wish I got out of the gate. Cause like, yeah, it's really easy to get caught up in the like, got to be wearing this, got to have this brand of decoys. Make sure you have this call. And if you can't do a feed call, a hail call, chuck, like you can't do all that and like do basically like a main street show routine, then like just keep that shit in your bag because you don't know what you're doing. Like that's stuff that doesn't help anybody. So I think like get out there, man. I think like I had a few guys take me on hunts when I was early on, and like there's single hunts like, hey, yeah, you've never hunted before, come with us. And then like that was it, which was great. That was perfect. And then other than that, I just kind of did it on my own, which was awesome because I could go out there and I tell you like where I'm at now with a duck call is not amazing. I'm not a confident person, but like I can quack now. I can sound like a duck to a decent, respectable amount. And when I think back to that first season of me sitting in by myself in like my little blinds and just making notes that I should have thrown my own call in the water, like, to be honest with you. But you know what? There was no one else to tell me different.
Right.
And the extreme of it is I still killed ducks. And that's not to justify, hey, everything I was doing was wrong, but I still killed ducks. But it's to say like, man, I had a dozen decoys, 3 of them sank within, they had a 2-hour hunt life before I had to like wade back out and like kind of like squeeze the water out of them. And then I had like, just your standard $30 Buck Gardner double nasty, which to this day I still have. Actually became my kids' call. That's what they play with around the house. They have a couple nicer calls too, but that's their like, and that thing, I will tell you, I'm not a huge Buck Gardner guy. I mean, that's the only Buck Gardner I've ever owned, but like that thing has been everything from like a sand shovel to a smoothie straw to like, it's had more, that call has had more goldfish crackers blown through it than like you could imagine. And like to this day, if I just like take it in the bathtub and like swish it around, like it'll still quack. Like I haven't messed with it because like I don't know what's going on with this thing, but it has survived hell. And it's awesome. So you know what? And that was like $32 Canadian. So that's like $1.50 American. So you should be able to afford that.
That double nasty isn't. I think it's about $25 bucks here.
You're $40 probably here. Like by the time with taxes, you're probably just shy of 50. But like, you know what I mean? Like, and you're not going out and buying a $200 acrylic call. You don't know how to use the thing yet.
Right.
Like buy a call, figure it out, and upgrade your gear as you go, and you'll have fun. But like if you hit the field your first hunt and you're thinking like, well, I better lay 8 on the ground. I mean, 2 of them better be banded. I got to make sure I pose for a pick and all my stick gear. Right. Like you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. Like, I don't think that's what it's all about, to be honest. And like, and again, for those folks where like, if honestly your fires are lit by showing up to the field in the newest, craziest gear and like only smashing limit is like the only thing that's going to like put a smile on your heart, then like, good for you, man. There's nothing wrong with that. That's none of my business.
Yeah.
I just think,
I mean, it's also like the stages of waterfowling. So like, you start off and it's like, the same thing happened to me. You start off and you've just got like Facebook Marketplace decoys, hand-me-downs, like whatever cheap Academy Sports camo you could buy. It was like a $25 coat, some redhead waders from Bass Pro. And it's like, you start there and then it's like, you start to figure it out. And then you start to learn. And like my thing with like acquiring gear has always been like, match the hatch. So like if you're hunting fields that do traffic 1,000 geese, you might want 100 decoys. But you can also just take 12 of those to fields that are trafficking 5 birds at a time. And just start to match it. Or like us hunting divers, like there can be 10, 20,000 divers out on the lake. And it's like, you probably want 12 dozen decoys to be able to pull them in and get their attention. But then you might go on a wood duck hunt where you only need 4 hen mallards. And it's like, but you just like, at least for me, I just started acquiring gear like as I needed it.
100%
so like,
same.
So like I have a couple dozen full bodies, but then if I want to make that spread bigger, I have silos, I have shells. And then it's like, you just start to progress and like, you upgrade your calls, you upgrade your camo, you upgrade your waders and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't need to, then you don't have to.
And you don't end up with that garage full of stuff that your wife's pissed off about.
That's why
you know what I mean? Where it's like, but where it's like, Like, why do you have 7 dozen floaters and like
Yeah.
all you hunt is cornfields? Like, well, I thought I needed them. Like, where it's like, well, right? Like, wouldn't you have been better off spending that on stuff to fit your field, right?
Exactly.
You just cater a better set of gear for what you're doing, right? It would be like if you were going to go out deer hunting and you did all this research on big game hunting and bought all the stuff you needed to go like sheep hunting in the mountains.
Yeah.
You've got a bunch of really nice gear. It's awesome. It's great stuff, but like, it's not actually going to work for what you want to go do.
Right.
So I think like just getting out. And I think that's, and yeah, if anyone takes anything away from this rambling of mine, I would say like, just get out in the field, like take a handful of shells.
Yeah.
And like, aside from decoys and aside from calling, like calling honestly is, I don't know, man, calling works. And okay. I don't know. Calling works. Calling is a part of duck hunting. It lures in birds. It is not essential.
Right. Of course.
I'm gonna float that out there. Like if you have 6 decoys and you're in the right spot, way more important than calling is your hide.
That's what everybody
by far
completely misses. Yeah.
Yeah. And they go like, no, I got to go out there and I'm going to like sit on the shore and throw like some reeds over my legs and I'm just going to blow hail calls. It's like, well, then nothing is coming anywhere nearby.
Yeah, when
like,
you got your big satellite head sticking out of the reeds, then they're going to be like, no, we're good.
Like if you throw 3 old decoys out in the water and you know birds are in the area, like trafficking, and you know they like if you're in a little back pond and you've seen ducks there before every evening and you throw a couple decoys out and you go bury yourself in some brush, the ducks will show up.
Of course.
So like bury yourself within shooting range, which regardless of what your choke package says isn't 80 yards. It's probably more like 30 ideally, especially when you're starting out.
Yeah.
Right. And then have at her, have fun. Right. Like that's it. I don't know.
It's all about having fun. It's just that you can get as deep or as superficial with it as you want, but you can't lose sight of the fact that we're all just out to have fun.
And that's why, like, and then taking new guys out too, right? It's the same thing, right? Everyone's like, I don't want to take, like they don't want to take new hunters because it might screw up the hunt. It's one hunt. Like, how many hunts have you had? Like, I've only been at it, well, whatever, since 2020 was my first solo season. So, 2 seasons. And like, I've had enough hunts to say that I will totally scrap a hunt to put a new guy in the blind.
Absolutely.
Like if having him there is so detrimental that I'm like, well, we're probably not going to shoot birds today. I will have him in the blind, her, whoever. Yeah. And like, have a good time regardless. Cause like, that to me is way more like, okay, so we smashed 5 birds, which is, you know what I mean? Like the intrinsic value is way more to have another hunter or someone else in the passion than it is to throw 5 more birds in my freezer. Right. Yeah. Like same as when I go on a hunt, like usually like, I haven't taken many people cause I'm still new. So I try not to be the guy like, come on a hunt. I know what I'm doing. It's more like, I have no clue. If you want to join me, you're more than welcome to. Yeah. But I always like, I rarely, like on the times when I'm taking new folks, I don't shoot. Right. Like, and not that I'm so experienced that I don't care, but it's like, I would way rather, like, if there's even a shot, like if somehow what I have laid out works. Yeah. It's all you. Cause like, if you down one, I know you're hooked. Like you said, if they get a bird on their first hunt, they're hooked. Yeah. And that's where it's way more than going like, well, I might shoot some birds today. So I don't want to take a new guy. It's like, get off it. It's not worth it.
Well, and that's another part of the like sequence of waterfowl too, is like, you kind of go into this, like, you always have to shoot limits. And like, don't get me wrong, when I was on birds for a long time, I was like, it feels weird not to shoot a limit. Yeah. I mean, it's like divers, which is fine. But then
I don't shoot that many limits. So like for me, it's like, well, it's not hard not to shoot a limit. So
I wasn't shooting like tons of limits, but like you're just kind of like, you're chasing the limit. And then like after you do that, you kind of like start to look inside yourself. You're like, there's a little bit more to this. And then that's where I've started, taking a lot more people on their first hunts and stuff like that. Not that I wouldn't have in the past. It's just like, I've come to this point where I'm like, anybody that wants to go with me is always welcome. And I can't tell you how many people I've taken on their first hunt and like, they're hooked. Yeah. And it's so cool to see that. And then you also, like you said, you were trying to find more people to hunt with. Like I have so many people to hunt with now. It's insane. Like I can go out anytime and be like, I can text 15 people and be like, hey, you want to go? And if I get to the 15th person, then there's probably something wrong. They're like, oh, they don't want to hunt with me anymore.
Yeah. Do you guys have like the youth season? Do you guys have that in your area?
Yeah, we have. It's the weekend before our regular duck season.
Yeah. See this. So I don't know if it's a BC thing or a Canada thing. So don't hold me to that. But like, I know in BC for sure, like we scrapped it this year. And I think that was one of the worst things they could have done. Yeah. So we used to call it what did we call it? It was like youth. And so it was like, if you were a youth, so you had to be under a certain amount of age, I think. Yep. And there was like elderly folks that could sneak in there. Like if you were like
senior.
Yeah. Or just not able to get out in the field anymore. It's like, look, this is a really good chunk of season. Like get out there and enjoy. Like,
yeah. Right.
There was some ways you could apply that was just not like, you didn't have to be under the age of 16. There was a few tidbits there, but they scrapped it this year, I think.
See, they did ours 2 years ago. They started doing youth and veterans on the same weekend.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, which, I think it's cool to give the veterans a portion, like a weekend, like they do with the youth. But the problem was it was overlapping with the youth. And so people that like, it crowded a lot of the public land. And then people that were taking youth out, they were like, oh, well, this kind of sucks because now these kids don't get like the full advantage that they were given. So it's created a little bit of animosity between like, do they stay on the same weekend? Do they split it up? Do they give veterans a weekend later in the season? It's just all
that makes a lot of sense. Like I understand the perspective because like, and man, like I we don't probably have as many veterans in our area, but I got some buddies who have served Canada and the States, and I 100% have nothing but undying respect for the fellows and ladies who choose to do that. But like, it doesn't necessarily mean that veteran hasn't waterfowl hunted for the last 30 years of his life, right? Like, whereas I think those weekends were created less of maybe like a reward weekend and more of a like, let's get some, like a chance to get that new people in, right? Like that was and I mean, and on the flip side of that coin, some of those kids I know down south have duck hunted since they were 4 years old. So
exactly.
There's that, right? So like I could see some gray area there, and that's tough, but there has to be so much about pouring more folks in. That's for sure.
Yeah. I've been trying to make that like a staple of what, like this podcast and like my YouTube channel and stuff has been a lot trying to give information for people that are new to it. Not to say that like I'm a professional by any means, but there's just not a lot of people that are like dedicating content to targeting new hunters.
Yeah. So, every podcast has that like one token episode they do, right? Where it's like, hey, you need to have a 12 gauge shell. Like, it's like, wow, thanks. I couldn't have read that on Google, right? And there's a lot. Like, I know we have one podcast up here in Canada, like Punisher Waterfowl. Yep. And they do a good job. Like, they bring on a lot of different guests, but like they're since kind of their like inception, I think 2020 is when they got going. Okay. It's always been like to educate, right? So even when their guests are on, it may not necessarily be like, here's how you set a spread, but it's more around, which I think is the part of waterfowling that like I lean into maybe, and is maybe where I'm at, I guess, in it, even though I'm new, is like they lean into like not so much educating in like a tactical sense or tactile sense of like, here's how you shoot, here's how you put out decoys. Like they do episodes like that. Yeah. But it's more educating in just the way of like, how do you exist in the waterfowling community and then like just be a decent contribution to it. Right. Yep. Right. Like it's more that of like, hey, you're in the field, like here's just like what decent folks do. So it's more of like almost laying out a role model map, right? Of like, this is what a decent person is. This is, this is what we would do in this situation. Here's like kind of laying out that rather than like you see some of these videos where, you see on YouTube where it's like, somebody's got their, whatever they call it, like expose video where like, so-and-so's in our blind, let's go like spook them out. You're like, what are you doing? Like, like now you've got every idiot who has shotguns, like going out and trying to like spook each other out in the dark. It's like, that sounds like a nightmare to me. Like, so that's a bad idea. Yeah. So it's just a lot more of like, I guess, educating in the sense of what we're talking about, where it's like, get involved, get out there, get in the field. You don't have to have all the gear, like that kind of education where it's, maybe I haven't given you anything that would actually help you that first day you hit the field, but maybe you actually hit the field that first day. Right. I mean, and that's the big first step. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
So like, I mean, telling you that you need 20 dozen decoys doesn't get you in the field.
Right.
Telling you that like, yes, you can kill ducks with six decoys. Maybe there's a chance you go like, well, yeah, I can afford $20, and now you're out in the field, at least giving it a shot, right?
Yeah, and you can do like you're giving like ethical advice of what things to do in the field and what not to do when you're, you know, around other hunters and stuff like that, and like create a good, positive hunting environment. But then also giving people the confidence to be like, you don't need to spend $500 on decoys to go hunt. You don't need to spend $1,000 on waders to go hunt. You don't need to spend $1,500 on a shotgun. It's like what you have will work.
Yeah. I mean, you don't need to do all that. You will eventually.
Definitely at that point too.
I'll never lie to anyone and say like, man, it is cheap. Waterfowling, no problem. But it's cheap to get into. Doesn't mean it's going to be cheap forever, but like, it doesn't mean it has to be expensive your first hunt. And like, and there's lots of things, with when you say about ethics of other hunters. I mean, waterfowling is another one. You guys probably maybe get it more. I know I don't know if you guys have like draws, like lotteries or whatever for your blinds.
Yes, we do.
So like, we don't have that. There's a lot of public land. We have a lot of like no shooting rules. That's more our jam.
Okay.
BC like leans pretty on the like anti-gun, anti-hunter side. Like if Canada was a state, it would probably be like your California. Like BC would be, you know, where it's
very liberal.
Very Starbucksy. That would be. I mean, until you hit like the desert, and then you slowly lean into Texas. The more northern you go, like it's just like this very like a gradient. We start at Portland, and like you kind of go up to Texas. Like that's kind of where we're. So, and I'm in the Portland area right now. But it's so. I mean, it's a lot more like. So there's not like lotteries for blinds. There's not a lot of competition, so it's not a thing. But there is going to be times where like you set up, and you're there, you know, 2 hours before first light. You got a sweet setup. You've done all your work. And then like a headlamp busts through the brush like 150 yards to your right. Yeah. So like you got like a lot of options there. Like you can just like run out your day and you guys can both blow out birds and have no fun. Yeah. You can go yell at each other, or you can also just go like, hey man, like I don't know if you knew we were here. Like let's start there first. Right. And then say like, oh, you didn't realize we were here? Okay, well, like, do you mind moving down because you haven't set up yet? We're set up. That may resolve it. Or you say like, hey, you've got 12 decoys. I've got 20 decoys. Why don't we throw them all in this section of pond? Yeah. And there's like room in our blind for another dude. You want to join? Yeah. And now you both maybe have a wicked hunt, as opposed to like starting off the morning yelling at each other and then going home empty. You know what I mean? Exactly. It's just a different mentality. And like, I'm a pretty laid back guy just in my life in general. So that's why a lot of things I don't do. As soon as things become a hassle or a headache, like that kills it for me. So yeah, I've approached waterfowling in the same way of just like, I'm not looking for a headache. I'm just looking to enjoy what lights a little bit of fire in me. And that's chasing ducks. Yeah. Well, it's cool to hear that like your guys' struggles and wins are the same thing as ours. Yeah. It just seems like all of North America, it doesn't change. And I mean, it's cool to hear that. And, you know, with you being, I mean, you are so far away from me. You have to be like 36 hours away from me. Yeah. And so like, but we're having the same conversation about the same things. And it's like drastically different spots, but the waterfowling is still at its core the exact same. That's so cool to hear. Well, and I think it's across like you said, across North America. It's crazy. Like it's funny because, like I said, I've done a lot of work and just connected with like people down in like Louisiana, Arkansas, Florida, like that area, and they always like, oh, like how far is it? I'm like, literally, if you drew up like a diagonal line until you hit the other ocean, like I'm somewhere over there. Like it's not like it's just you know what I mean? Because like for Callapalooza, I don't know if you know what that is. It's like a big, so RNT, like Rich and Tone calls the Mondos, those guys, like one of like the titan in the call industry. Yeah. John Stevens, he's the guy that runs that. So I like honestly really cool. I don't know him personally. He might be a total dick. I don't know. But like just the way he runs his company is really cool. And the way of like he basically I don't know how many years now. I want to say 3. He runs a festival. So RNT is not a small place. It is a large like factory. Yes, it's huge. Plus like they've got a shop, plus they've got a bar. Like it is a small village. Yeah. So what he does is he just opens up the grounds to any call maker in the industry. Big, small, whoever you are, come set up a tent on his front lawn, basically. And they throw a festival just to celebrate calls. Like, and then they push other people's calls. They have call making competitions. It's all about calls.
Yeah.
But it's cool that like a business, like, I mean, that would like Ford saying like, hey, whoever builds cars, like come build cars in our factory for a week, right? Like you're never going to see that in an industry. Like if you're a Titan, you're kind of wanting to just like squish everybody else and do your own thing. So I like for whatever, and when I say he might be a dick, I have heard no one who has met him say anything bad about that fella, but I just don't know him personally. So I won't vouch for him, but I will say, like I said, like something like that goes a long way. So anyways, Callapalooza, just with some of the guys I worked, a lot of them are in the call industry, and they're like, oh, you got to come down. And I was like, oh, okay. It's like a 23-hour flight. Like it's not even, I was like, I was like, I could fly to Europe almost with it. Like, it's just crazy. Yeah. Sometimes when you look at it, but like you said, they're, again, like they might be hunting bayous, and I'm hunting cedar forest on the edge of a river, but like, it's not all that different. Same idea.
It's the same concepts. It's just different terrain. Yeah.
Yeah. We get frustrated the same days. We have the same winds.
Yeah.
The only difference is I'm really lucky. And like, I've had a few conversations where guys always like take the dig. I'm really lucky because I'm at the top, not the top, because there's still like the rest of BC or Canada, but I'm kind of at the top of the migration. So I get the dumb birds. Yeah. So any successes I've had, apparently they're all dumb birds. So for whatever that's worth, but like, you know what I mean? Like they all go up, they go north, they hatch, and then they're coming down.
Yeah.
Now I get to hunt them way before they get to like anywhere else down south.
Right.
So like, you know, they're less call shy, they're less decoy shy. I mean, there is the, you know, veteran birds in there that have, you know, maybe done a few migrations, but all those new hatchlings have no idea what's going on. So they see a Mojo spinning duck and they're all in, like, so
they never seen that before in their life.
Yeah. Which is crazy. So for the first couple of weeks of the season, like it's easy.
Yeah.
And not like extremely easy, but it is easier than maybe the first couple of weeks of the southern season.
Right.
But the difference is like, because of that, and this is not, again, to throw shade at anyone in my area, but like, it's almost made hunters lazy. So like, if you talk about
understandable though,
like, yeah, if you talk about like calling culture in my area, like hail calls, like that's it. Like if you're anywhere like in an area where there's other hunters, if you can see a duck and it's like a pinprick on the horizon and you wait, it's just like, whack, 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 whack. It's like you're 40 yards from me. Like that thing is 6 kilometers away. Like, and it's one duck. Like it's not coming. Right. But that's it. It's just like hail call. Like, and it's just, there's no finesse. There's no finishing. You don't have to like work on all that like fine tuning, because for 3 weeks out of the season, they do not care.
Yeah.
And then what happens is a lot of those guys all disappear. And that's where then there's not a lot of pressure, is because like that first 3 weeks is easy. If you've got 6 decoys in a heartbeat, you can have a good time. I mean, like that's an exaggeration, but pretty close. And then after that, it gets hard. It gets cold. The weather's shitty. Your fingers hurt. It's rainy. The birds aren't as stupid. You know, it's like, and then you got to work for it a little bit. And then it slowly thins the herd. And then you kind of have like, then you can pick all the spots you want and have a good time. But this is very different. Whereas like you talk about down south and they're like, man, they've got the way those guys run calls down south. Oh man, like just like with the squeals and the pops and like everything. I'm like, what do you guys like? Dude, that is insane. I'm like, I can make a quack. It was like that seems to work. I don't know. Calling always has been something. So like that's one. I don't even know, to be honest with you. Like if waterfowling or calling bit me harder, I actually don't know if I know that answer. It was one of those ones where like listening to the guys call. Well, I was hunting with them. I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then I met an older guy through a conservation thing he runs in my area. It's called the Pit Waterfowler. So they do nesting boxes. I think they're up to like, I want to say in and around 200, give or take 20 nesting boxes that they maintain every year.
Oh, that's crazy.
And like they're a private.
That's super cool.
They're one of the, I don't want to say old dudes. He's going to hear this and like be mad at me, but like one of the older fellows who runs it. It was his dad's project that he started way back, and like started with 10 boxes, and every year they've just added a few boxes. So I as a new hunter, one of their big things, they always try to take out new hunters and do the youth season. So he was kind enough to take me out on a hunt, and I just, man, I must have chatted to 𝐤𝐸 fast about calling, because like I was like, the guys I first hunted with, like that was hail call, and it was like foggy, so like birds were just dropping in, you didn't have to call. And then all of a sudden we were like in the blind, it was just me and this fella, and he was like, feed and chuckle. And I was like, quack, quack, quack. And it was like a little bit of whine. And then like, it was just like, I was like, what is this? Like this. And like, and he was actually, and we could see the birds. It was like, it was a bluebird day. Cause I remember he kept apologizing that it wasn't ideal. And he was like coaxing birds in where like, you could see them and they would like turn. and they would come in and then they would like maybe flare, but then they'd turn back. And I was like, okay, this is like, it was like a game of cat and mouse where I was like, okay, now we're playing. Like, we're not just spotting something and shooting it. It's like, you've got to trick them with decoys. You got to talk to them with calls. Like, you literally have to learn a whole nother language, more so with geese and ducks. But and I was like, okay. So then all of a sudden, I from that moment on, I was like researching calling. I was like, this is a whole thing. Cause like, I don't know, deer calls, you grunt, you rattle some horn. You know, it's just not it's not the same.
It's different. Yeah.
Yeah. To the same extent as waterfowl, where it's like, you got to know if they're on a corner, you got to know if they're going away. You got to like all these things. You got to know what your spread looks like. So you're making the right noises. So like, you're not making the noise of a flying duck when all your ducks are on the ground, like all these like weird things that you wouldn't think of. So it's a whole nother rabbit hole you can go down. But so anyways, so I started talking to him, and then he was like, oh, you got to listen to calling comps. I listened to that and I was like, I'm sold. Whatever that is, I want to get there one day. And so for 2 years, I've just been hammering on calls, and I'm nowhere close to that, but I'm probably closer than I was on day one. So we'll call it a win.